Motivation is probably one of the hardest things that motivational speakers or anybody else has to do. Encourage someone who doesn't particularly want to be encouraged or feel encouraged or potentially feel discouraged. $1 million question is, how do you motivate people in this new era of COVID when there is so much pressure against them? Well, on the show today, we have Dawanyi, who's a motivational speaker, and he's going to talk us through how he inspires people and motivates people across the globe. Nyasha, thanks so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Now, one of the things that you've done in the past is you've motivated young people on the continent,
Yes.
Other people in East Asia, I think it is.
Yes, yes.
The question for me, though, is how do you motivate people that are particularly demotivated right now in this COVID environment? Let's talk about kids in school, for instance.
Of course, of course. Maybe if I start off by giving you a brief background of who I am. If I may formally introduce myself, my name is Dawanyi. I'm a certified motivational speaker who's been in the media, marketing space, as well as speaking space since the beginning of 2015. Apart from that, I've also launched my own entrepreneurial organization called Ego Motive, currently established in South Africa as well as Zimbabwe. If you can maybe rephrase that question, I can definitely try my best to answer it as well.
So typically you would walk into a school and you would say to the kids, be the best that you can be, or the world's your oyster, right? But right now, it doesn't really feel like the world is anybody's oyster. Kids are failing to write exams, are not finishing school. How do you motivate those individuals?
That's an interesting question. Honestly, there are basically two types of motivation. There is what you call intrinsic motivation and externally stimulated motivation. Now, externally stimulated motivation is not the best type of motivation, mainly because it always needs an external force, someone like myself, to keep you inspired, to keep you motivated. There's another type of motivation called intrinsic motivation. Now, in intrinsic motivation, essentially, this is motivation that comes from within. You do not need a person like myself to keep you motivated. It's more of driven by the reason why you want to be, or why you want to do something. So what I would...
Maybe let me give you a scenario.
Yes.
Let's talk about kids that are marginalized.
Right.
Right. Kids who live in some deprived communities.
Yes.
They live in shacks. There is no running water. They struggle to get by. The world seems to have conspired against them because they don't go to the right schools. How are you motivating those type of kids?
Essentially speaking, I would like to touch on this subject called neuroassociation. It's a new scientific discovery on how the mind works. Now, in neuroassociation, the findings suggest that what you associate with what you experience is more important than the experience itself. To give an example, when you hear the word homework, you either associate pain or pleasure in doing your homework. Now, this association of pain or pleasure determines your attitude, keyword attitude, towards doing your homework. And your attitude, for the most part, determines your results. So it's not about the external situation which you've faced, but your interpretation of it. What do you think of your situation? We have very inspiring stories from the person who founded Standard Bank, if I'm not mistaken, came from absolute poverty, but his interpretation of his situation changed everything else. So my take would be your thought process. What are you thinking about, and what are you feeding your mind? Because essentially that's where it all is. It's all in the mind.
But here's the thing. Not everybody's an Einstein.
100%.
Right? So not everybody's going to be intrinsically motivated. I mean, it's bad enough when your mom and dad comes home and they are all glum-faced and don't know where their next meal is going to come from.
Right.
How do you, as an individual who's given the assignment of talking to 15 kids who are struggling, who don't see the future because they have no power in their homes, so they can't do their homework at night. Some kids in many countries walk incredibly long distances, but the typical kid is not necessarily self-driven. So the question would be, what is a conversation of sowing seed in those children that where a kid will say, but hey, you know what? Let me try. Let me gather my thoughts, mind over matter. Let me master this.
Right. That's an interesting topic as well. First of all, I feel like parents have a major role to play. As you rightfully said, no one is an Einstein. Some aren't Einsteins at all. Heredity and environment creates the individual. So, in terms of building a character worthwhile, it really takes a lot of nurturing the child in such a way that, in as much as they might not be the highest or most literate person out there, they can still find their strength. It's not all about education. I'm going to say that up front. You can be successful as a basketball player, as a tennis player, almost anything in this day and age. It's really about identifying your strength, and hence why I'm saying the parents have the major role to play. So I really think, and I'm very keen on the idea of looking in hindsight, what really is your child's strength? And not only looking, but furthering that talent, not just saying, okay, my son is a good soccer player, let's put him at a club and see how it goes. Let's literally nurture that talent, because Rome wasn't built in a day. Everything takes time.
Now, beyond talent,
yes,
what are some of the other key elements in building a future soccer player, a future basketball player? Because you're not the only guy, or you're not the only kid that wants to be a top swimmer, a top athlete.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the athletes that succeed are those that are most exceptional, whereas those of us that are average can end up doing what we do now, because you don't really have to be exceptional to work in telecoms or in agriculture or in banking. You'll scale to great heights if you are exceptional, but even those that aren't will still be able to earn a living. What else do you need besides talent to accomplish?
I think it's a mixed bag. Obviously, talent is not the only thing. We can talk of your general passion, perseverance, determination, as well as your skill. Obviously, the famous saying goes, hard work beats talent. So essentially, you really need to be on your A game in terms of keeping up with your competitors, as well as just learning from the people that have traveled that path. So I think that the key factor would be blocking out all distractions, because it's a very distracted world out there. Too many people have conflicting ideas of who you should be, and most often at times, if you're not careful, you end up listening to the wrong voice. So I think a good dose of enlightenment in regards to what exactly you want to do is very, very important. And when you've completely decided that this is the path I want to take, don't look back. Literally keep your focus on that one thing. That is a very big differentiating factor.
Now, let's talk about the people that you typically try and motivate.
Yes.
Your message presumably would differ when you're talking to 15-year-olds that are in school, when you're talking to university students, and when you're talking to individuals that are grown and potentially have families.
100%.
What would those typical message be?
So I definitely do tailor make the speech in accordance with the target group which I'm speaking to. When we're talking about the toddlers, it's mostly about just generally having a great attitude towards your books, towards your schoolwork. So it's not very complicated. When we go to high school students, that's when we are more of talking along the lines of introspection, discovering yourself, your true essence. When I talk to university students, I firmly believe that they have some sort of understanding in regards to who they want to be and how they want to get there. So the conversation in that respect is more along the lines of the necessary steps they should take. Yes.
What would those steps be? Is there a narrative? If I was to say to you, what are the 3 key steps to identifying who you are or pursuing your dream? What would those steps be?
I would say, first and foremost, cut out negative influences, cut out bad friends. I think it's quite popular saying now, have a small circle, have those type of friends that propel you to where you ought to be, as opposed to those friends that just want to party, have fun, waste time. There's also another famous saying that goes, you are the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. So I do really feel that your network is definitely your net worth. So the first step would be filter out those bad friends. My second advice would probably be have a sense of purpose. You know, it's not about the money. A lot of people follow money as opposed to your passion. And that is just a trap, because money is a materialistic thing that is always going to be there and you're always going to want more. But if you're following your passion, it's more of having fun, but at the same time doing what you love.
Money then becomes a bonus.
Money is a bonus, exactly. And the third thing maybe would be just to stay focused. It's a distracted world, as I rightfully said before. You really need to be keen and eager on doing what you want to do. I think those are 3 main points.
Nyasha, thanks so much for speaking to us. We would have loved to have carried on, but our time is up. Nyasha Dawanyi, who's a motivational speaker, talking to us about a couple of key things regarding staying motivated. And one of the things he does say is follow your passion, make your money, but make your money while having fun. That's all we have for you today on Cope. This is how we cope. Look forward to the pleasure of your company in our next show. Until then, goodbye.